want to talk about a couple myths of police and disciplining police officers. The reason I'm having this conversation today is because I've seen a lot of stuff recently where a police officer makes like a minor error, and maybe a minor error of judgment. Nobody gets hurt, nobody's harmed, nobody's dead, nobody's killed. Nothing actually happened. Just like a minor error in judgment by a police officer, and people are out there with torches and pitchforks demanding that this police officer be fired. And I made a little video. I put it on Instagram where I said, hey, what if I told you that not every police officer that makes a mistake needs to be fired. Sometimes all it takes is that you need to pull that officer aside and say, hey, don't do that again. And it's very true. The words that I said, there's no lie there, and it shouldn't be controversial at all. But the reason that there's this myth that police officers are never punished is because the people that are saying this stuff are stupid and crazy, and they exaggerate every freaking case. And this is like case in point. So when I made the video, I said sometimes it's okay to just pull a police officer aside and tell them, don't do what you're doing, and it works. And the response from people said, oh, what if they're out there killing people? What if they're out there beating their wives? One guy was like, if you cheat on your wife, would that work for you? I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you freaking morons? That's why nobody respects you. That's why nobody listens to you. That's why nobody does what you want them to do. That's why you're constantly frustrated and think that people are making fun of you, because they are making fun of you, because you're a moron, because you can't take a simple topic and just be like, yeah, you know what? Sometimes if a police officer makes a mistake, it's not a big deal. It's not a big mistake. They're trying to equate a minor mistake with critical misconduct, which it's absolutely hilarious. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, for some reason, every time an officer does even the slightest thing wrong, people think that has to be critical misconduct, and that police officer has to be fired or do days off or something like that. The other is that there's a lot of things that police officers are accused of doing that people think that a police officer didn't do the right thing, and those people making the accusation are simply wrong. Police officer didn't do anything wrong. Being a police officer is one of the few jobs that I can think of where you can actually do your job nearly perfect, but people will still be unhappy with the way you did your job, and they'll complain about it. Or you'll just do your job, maybe not perfect, but you didn't necessarily do anything wrong, and people will still demand that you're fired. They'll dox you, they'll show up at your house protesting and doing all of these things. There's been, let's see, what's the biggest one? The biggest one is the officer that killed Michael Brown. I can't remember the officer's name anymore, but that guy's life is over. He's not a police officer anymore. I think last I heard he was like moving to Alaska to try to hide from the public. What did he do? The officer that killed Michael Brown, he was out on patrol, was aware of a strong armed robbery, went to detain the suspect of a strong armed robbery. This suspect of a strong armed robbery was a kid. I don't know if he was 17 or 18 years old. He might have been 16 years old for all I care. But this kid was like 6'2", close to 300 pounds. He was a freaking ogre. Overpowered the officer, started beating the ever-living shit of the officer out of the officer, tried to take the officer's gun. The officer was forced to defend himself, shot and killed Michael Brown, who was an armed robbery suspect, who was on video, not an armed robbery, a strong armed robbery suspect. He had committed the felony act of robbery. It was on video. We've all seen this video. But the public started saying that Michael Brown was on his knees with his hands up saying, don't shoot, and the officer shot him. There was so much evidence that disproved this, but it didn't stop people from coming out and saying, this is really one of the things that started the Black Lives Matter movement. This whole movement stop killing black people, stop killing unarmed black people. You know, this officer, God, I wish I could remember his name. They were calling for his head. They wanted a public execution of this guy. He did nothing wrong. He's one of those cases that people lump in with officers that never got punished for doing anything wrong. Well, he didn't do anything wrong. He doesn't need to be punished. There's also, like, I've had a couple cases, and I think I can actually put a clip up here in a minute. If I can stop talking after I describe it, I will do that. But I was on a call, this is a couple years ago now, but it's on the body camera channel, where I responded to a call from a woman who said her sister is dealing with mental health crisis and that she needs to go to the hospital for treatment. I get to the house. There's this girl, I think her name was Precious. She was sitting in the middle of the floor, rocking back and forth, screaming at the top of her lungs, made up hymns.
Jesus, I've been trying to maintain it for the last 3 days.
Yeah. Well, I think she needs more help than what you can give her right now.
Okay. I don't want to put her on medicine and like, now she's a zombie for me for my life. So I can't get her out the facility.
Mm-hmm. She was saying something about praise the Lord, or I can't remember what she was saying, but she was like in a catatonic state. She was out of it. So I talked to the older sister. I'm like, hey, we'll go ahead and take her for you. The girl didn't have any shoes or a jacket on. I think it was a little chilly that night. I was like, why don't you go up and get her some shoes and a jacket, and once you come down with that stuff, we'll get her out of here for you. And the girl was very appreciative. She goes to go up the steps, and the sister that was damn near catatonic on the floor runs over to her sister, grabs onto her, and just starts screaming in her ear like, no, 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 no.
Sierra, LaShawn Davis Brandon.
Precious. Whoa, stay here. Stay down here.
No, stop!
No, just turn around. I got her.
She can come. She can come.
Honey, listen.
She can walk. No, let her go. Let her go. She can do it.
Listen.
She can.
Nope.
No, stop. Get off of me. She can do it.
No,
she can. Let her go.
Listen,
let her
if
go.
You want her help, you have to let me help.
No, let her go.
Okay.
And I ran over and I separated them. I was like, Precious, stop. Well, that was when the original caller lost her freaking mind on me. She's like, don't put your hands on my sister. Get out of my fucking house. And just, she lost her fucking mind. At that point in time, we were past the point where this girl could take care of the situation.
Go ahead and grab her shoes and stuff.
I'll take her to the hospital.
Her with me. You've already proven that you're not capable of doing that.
It had already basically gone to violence. You know, she couldn't control her sister. She was holding her in like a pretzel hold. She was holding her like this and her legs wrapped around her. The house was destroyed. The furniture was knocked over, turned over. The coffee table was smashed and broken and sitting in the corner of the room. This girl had already demonstrated that she could not control her sister. Her sister was acting in a way that, you know, it was evident she needed to be forced into a mental health facility. That was now my responsibility to make sure that she went. When I went and separated them, the other girl lost her freaking mind.
Why are you grabbing me?
Relax.
Bang!
Listen, why are you yelling? Stop yelling.
Stop! I'm getting my nigga. Why are you grabbing me? No, I'm not. This is my house.
Okay, back up.
This is my house.
You do not
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Why are you getting her all worked up?
I'm
You
not.
had her come and get out of my face.
You
need to back
put
up
her
right
down.
now. I did not put her down.
You separated us. That's why she's doing that. You separated
You were
us.
elbowing her.
I told her to stop.
You were not doing this
You
right.
separated us, so
I
she's not
did.
gonna stop.
Okay.
I can control her. You can't.
No, you can't. You just demonstrated to me that you cannot control
You
her.
can't.
Borderline was assaulting police officers. I got her kind of calm and I got her into a side room, and she still was losing her freaking mind. Basically, I don't think she pushed through me. We'll have to watch the video in a second, but she got around me, and there was another officer that was trying to walk this other the girl that needed to get the girl in crisis. They were trying to walk her out of the house, and she walked over and tried to physically remove that officer from her sister. I ended up having to arrest the sister who called, and obviously she was pissed off at me.
No, shut up.
Relax.
Precious, shut up.
You goddamn relax. Get off me, man.
Precious, shut up.
She was
now
trying
you're
to
gonna
elbow
arrest
her and threaten her.
No, the fuck I
Yes, you
wasn't.
were.
No, I wasn't. Watch out. No, I wasn't. She was yelling. I said, Precious, stop.
Being defensive, like relax.
Back up, man.
Backing up.
Back up. I called you to help me.
me, not the
Listen,
fuck.
you can stop that
What are
right
you
now.
doing?
I'm gonna put
I
you in
can
cuffs
push
if I
my
have
nigga.
to.
That's my nigga.
No, you can't.
That's my nigga.
You're making
That's
her worse.
my nigga.
You're making her situation worse.
She is being manhandled.
doing
Look at
that.
it. Look at it. How I'm making her worse? Walk away. How I'm making her worse?
You know, obviously she was saying that I was using excessive force. I wasn't doing the right thing, blah, blah, blah. I had done nothing wrong. Everything I did was 100% appropriate. I'll go ahead and play some of that video right here.
I told y'all I didn't need y'all. I called y'all. Fuck, this supposed to be the motherfucker that's supposed to help me. Fuck is you talking about? Y'all fucking ignorant, bro.
So there are a couple of the myths that people propagate. You know, they're making all these accusations about police officers that, oh, the police officer violated my rights and nothing happened to him, blah, blah, blah. No, the police officer didn't actually violate your rights in that situation. You're wrong. You're making stuff up about a police officer. You're making it sound like there's a lot more police misconduct out there than there actually is, because I can tell you, it proved me wrong, that police misconduct is actually very rare with the number of police officers that are out there, the number of interactions they have with citizens on a daily basis, and the amount of police misconduct. It's actually a very small amount of police misconduct. Then they'll say, well, when police officers do screw up, they still don't get punished. And I saw one guy made a comment about that officer that put his hands on a female officer's neck. His comment was, I've never once seen a police officer tell another cop that he was wrong and stop him from committing a crime. The only time I did was when this female officer tried to stop her sergeant, and the sergeant put his hands around her neck, and he still didn't lose his job for a year. Well, there's multiple parts to that comment that I can refute. One, you've never seen a police officer stop another police officer from committing a crime. So you've never seen another police officer walk up to, like, you've never seen me go up to another officer and say, hey, Jim, I don't think this is the right way to go. We need to go this other route. The reason you've never seen that is because nothing happened. Because it happens all the freaking time. I was just on a call the other day with one of my buddies. It wasn't serious misconduct, but it was a situation where we should have taken a report, and he wasn't about to take a report. And I looked over at him, I said, we're taking a code 1, right? He says, no. And then I was like, well, based on what she's saying, we should probably take code 1. He's like, okay, fine. Gets out his notepad, gets down the information, takes a report. Why doesn't the public hear about it? Because it was a big nothing burger. Nothing freaking happened with it. Now, the situation with the female officer that pulled the sergeant off, and then the sergeant grabbed her around the throat. That's another situation where if the sergeant had not grabbed her around the throat, that situation probably never would have become public. Nobody would have ever heard about that. It was the fact that he grabbed her around the neck that made that video go viral. Now, the idea that he wasn't punished and it took him a year to fire him, that is something that's called due process. Doesn't matter who you are in our society, you are entitled to due process. People are upset that we don't just, if at the moment a police officer screws up, that we don't just drag them out to the side of the road and execute them. You know, that's not what we do. It's not what we do with criminals. Why would we do that to police officers? Why do people think that we need to offer all of these defenses and all of these ways out for criminals that just make a mistake, but we don't need to afford any of that due process or any of those opportunities to police officers? If we live in a fair society, then everybody deserves the same due process. And if there's a police officer that screws up and it takes a year to get rid of him, it takes a year to get rid of him. The idea that police officers are never punished it's laughable, to be honest. Like, I can think of, I mean, I don't need to go down the list, but the very first time that I was ever punished as a police officer, I was written up as a brand new officer just off of probation. I had a guy who, he was in the backseat of a cruiser, was kicking at officers, and an officer sprayed him with mace. I was driving the wagon that night, so I had to go down and pick this guy up out of the back of a Crown Vic, put him in the wagon, transport him to headquarters because he needed to be interviewed. I think he got charged with assault on a PO that night. Due to all the video being reviewed, the video from the backseat of the wagon got reviewed as well. Now, this guy was a big, drunk, dumb idiot. And he was sitting in the back of the wagon. He kept unbuckling his seatbelt, standing up. I would pull off the side of the road, go back there with my partner. We would sit him down, buckle him back up, get on the road. The second we got on the road, he would unbuckle himself. We'd have to pull off the side of the road, We did this approximately 10 times while we were transporting this guy to headquarters. Finally, we were able to go a few miles down the road without him unbuckling himself. And right as we were about to pull up to headquarters, he unbuckled himself. So we were driving 5 miles an hour up to the door of the headquarters sally port, had to reach out, scan my ID, and we were going to be in the basement. We were no longer on the open road, and that is when he took his seatbelt off. So he takes his seatbelt off. As I'm pulling up to the thing, he stands up, reach out to scan my ID on the door thing, and I have to stop the truck. When I stopped the wagon, he fell over in the back of the wagon. He's drunk, he's handcuffed, he stood up in a moving vehicle. I hit the brakes because I had to. He fell over. It's kind of funny. He makes this like thud and he's like, "Ow, you son of a bitch, you know, why are you doing this to me?" And I hollered back at him, you know, something to the effect of, "You should have stayed seated with your seatbelt on. This wouldn't happen, you dummy." We pulled into the sally port. We got into a parking spot. He just laid in the back of the wagon. He moaned and groaned for a couple minutes and they ended up just going to sleep. So we just let him lay there. Detectives came out, opened the door, interviewed him. By that time, he calmed down enough. We were able to put him back in the seat, seatbelt him, take him to jail. It was over. Well, my sergeant at the time had to review all of the footage because there's a use of force on a handcuffed prisoner. You have to watch every single minute of footage available. That means he had to watch all of the footage from the back of the wagon. So our policy states that if somebody unbuckles themselves, you have to stop the vehicle, go back and buckle him. Since he unbuckled himself and stood up and fell over, and I didn't walk into the back of the wagon and check on him, I got written up for that. That was the very first time that I ever had any documented discipline on the department. It was stupid, but that's the kind of stuff that we get disciplined for all the time. I know there's multiple police officers from my department alone that have been brought up on criminal charges here recently. One of them was for dereliction of duty because it was a detective that wasn't progressing her cases. We have a former police officer from my agency who I believe is in federal prison right now for violating somebody's rights, and he just got sentenced a year and a half, 2 years ago. You know, that's like the whole spectrum. There's officers that get written up. There's officers that get 2-day, 3-4 day suspensions. It happens all the fucking time. The thing is, when this kind of stuff happens, it's not like it's published in the newspaper. And if it was, nobody would read it, nobody would believe it, and it wouldn't get a lot of publicity. So, I don't know. It just boggles my mind. The biggest thing that I find super freaking annoying is the people out there that are accusing an officer of serious misconduct because they saw something that they didn't like, when in actuality, the police officer didn't do anything wrong. And then they will demand that police officer get fired. And when you do that kind of stuff, you lose all credibility. People stop paying attention to you. So if you really want officers to be held accountable, you got to stop crying wolf every time a police officer does something that you don't like. You're getting angry because you're frustrated because you're not making any progress because the things that you're trying to do are stupid. So stop it. Those are going to be my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.